Greetings everyone, my name is Sai, and I have a question for you. Have you ever sat and pondered the nature of existence? What exactly separates us from animals, and what separates animals from plants? Is it possible to create consciousness? And if so, what does that say about our own consciousness? All these questions and more are raised by the Talos Principle, a philosophical puzzle game created by Crow Team, the same guys who made Serious Sam 3. A game about as different from the Talos Principle subject matter-wise as it's ever possible to get. In the game, you are a robot of some kind who wakes up in what is very obviously a simulation and are tasked by a god named Elohim to complete puzzles as a trial of your worthiness, so that you might one day ascend to everlasting life. With only one stipulation. You must never ascend the Great Tower, or only death awaits you. Or at least that's what Elohim claims. And then you start having conversations with Milton, the library interface AI, who starts trying to persuade you that maybe climbing the Great Tower isn't such a bad idea after all. So yeah, between a god, a perfect land, a temptation, a great tower, and a deceiver, the references to the Judeo-Christian book of Genesis aren't as much a subtext as they are a giant 40-foot neon sign. So I've heard the Talos Principle getting compared to Portal quite a lot, but I never got that feeling playing the game myself. Mostly because I find the humor aspect of Portal to be very much at the core of the game, and the Talos Principle isn't a comedy game, instead focusing more on philosophical introspection. That's not to say it's all dry though, because there are some funny moments. For example, you can ask Milton to retake your personality test to get a better score, whereupon he'll kick your ass back to the main menu and say, "Your issues with denial have been added to your personal log." There's also some wink-nudge referential humor going on, like when I play the kamikaze scream from Serious Sam 3 BFE that caused me to spontaneously suffer a mini heart attack, and by the way, fuck you, Crow Team. But other than that, it's mostly discussions on the topic of autonomy, consciousness, and society at large, and those are the fun and engaging parts of the game, whereas the puzzles seem like they're there primarily to fill space. The game's puzzle stages are divided into 3 separate locations, labeled A, B, and C respectively, with about 30 to 40 individual puzzles inside each area, and starting off they aren't too bad. They're mostly straightforward and do a good job of easing your introduction into the game. But around the start of location B, I really began to resent being forced to solve them, because that's around when the game had given me enough clues and hints to the overall mystery to get me really invested, and by that point the puzzles felt like busy work. They weren't bad puzzles for the most part, but they weren't what was fun about the game. Imagine reading a really enthralling book, but every 10 pages you get called away to play a round of chess. To that end, around halfway through location B, I started heavily relying on an FAQ I'd only briefly been glancing at prior, just so I could get through the puzzles faster. Then somewhere around the start of location C, I thought to myself, fuck it, I'm basically cheating already, right? I might as well cheat more efficiently, and then proceeded to no-clip my way through almost all of location C. Yay, PC gaming! As I said, the decision was made mostly because I was bored of the puzzles by that point, but also because they were really starting to get on my nerves. The vast majority of the puzzles in the game involve shooting lasers into receptacles to open doors, and using redirectors to angle the lasers accordingly. But more and more of these tests seem to be really relying on placing each redirector into one very specific area. To the point, actually, that you could have the correct solution in mind, but think it's wrong because the leeway they give each laser's line of sight is so ridiculously tiny. This led to me getting frustrated on more than one occasion, because I'd come across the correct solution 20 minutes ago, but my redirector was 3 feet from where it needed to be. But don't let the puzzles get to you. They aren't fantastic or a defining feature of the game by any means, but they aren't awful, and the rest of the game more than makes up for them. And like I said, if they ever really start pissing you off, you can just start no-clipping through them. The real selling point of the game is trying to figure out the mystery surrounding the whole thing by way of old corrupted files and audio logs, as well as by talking to Milton, the library interface AI. Indeed, I think the best part of the game is talking with him and arguing philosophy back and forth, because having genuinely thought-provoking conversations with him is more engaging to me than 1,000 tedious laser puzzles could ever be. Even looking back, my absolute favorite part of the game involved a conversation with him, where he reveals he'd been lying to you about something, and then says, "Wow, I can't believe you actually bought that." And I had bought it, hook, line, and sinker, and to have the rug pulled out from underneath me so suddenly to help illustrate his point was hugely impactful on me. If in 5 years I think back on my experiences with the game, that will be the moment that springs to mind. However, that does lead to an awkward discussion. If the puzzles are what you spend 80% of the game doing, and the good part of the game only happens every once in a while, is the game worth the admittedly high price of $40? Probably not, in my opinion, but I bought it for $15 on a Steam sale, and for that price I think the game is an insta-buy. Here's the thing, if I were asked to remake the Talos Principle, I would strip out the puzzle elements entirely and put in something else that furthered the story rather than just interrupting it. I might even do something akin to the Stanley Parable, where the game is fairly short, but you're encouraged to restart a lot and experience the story from different perspectives and to make different choices. That, I think, would be a game I'd recommend buying at full price. As is, I'd say grab the game when it goes on sale, unless you're the kind of person who thinks you'd really get a kick out of both the puzzles and the story. So that's about it. I hope you guys enjoy this brief aside from my usual content, because I adore doing reviews, and I've wanted to get back to making them lately. So be sure to tell me whether or not you like the idea of me doing game reviews as a bit of content in between 10DYDKs. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.